We were gonna let's do actors first.
Actors first, okay.
Cool.
Let's go, all of y'all. Let's follow the call to the show they call the Showrunner Show.
Nice.
Very
nice.
I mean,
nice and succinct.
I think I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like, did I do that before? I know I've done a screechy thing that goes to a low thing. I don't know.
Well, if you ever, as we get deeper in this podcast, if you ever repeat one of the intro songs, you probably won't notice.
True.
Well, welcome to the Showrunner Show, where every week we demystify some aspect of the job of showrunning for anyone who works in TV, who wants to work in TV, or who just wants to know how it's all made. I'm Drew Dowdle.
I'm John Eric Dowdle.
And I'm Stacy Shabosky.
This week we're talking about working with actors. I thought this might be, interesting as, Drew and I both, direct and produce and write, and Stacy came up writing and now produces. And, it's such an essential part of the television relationship, especially with your leads.
Yeah. I'd say today's topic to me is more about working with the lead actors that, looking through the stuff that we're going to talk about. It's more about the special trust and communication you build with your leads, in my opinion.
I think that's true. And I think as someone, I can speak as someone who's, more new to the directing game, someone who spent most of my career, producing and writing and kind of taking on the directing mantle in the TV space just in the last couple of years. That was definitely the thing I was most terrified of and most concerned about was stepping in and just sounding enough like a director and talking enough like a director and making sure I'm not, doing the wrong thing, saying the wrong thing, trying to get the best performance without showing my ass really based on my, lack of experience. And I think that's, I think maybe a concern for any new director is one of the primary concerns is just how the relationship with your lead actors are going to get. And sometimes you have an actor that might, have a reputation for being a little complicated or a little tricky or a little ornery, and that makes it, extra scary. So hopefully this will help a little bit.
Yeah, I know in my first couple movies, like there was this real fear of like, what if I say something to them and it ruins like their confidence and, ruins the next take. And, there was this real fear of almost like trying to drive the car through somebody else, like almost trying to control what they're doing without seeming controlling. Like, it was like, I feel like in film school, it was kind of taught as almost like a manipulation. How do you manipulate your actors to do what you want? And that wasn't a very healthy or helpful way I found, to work with actors, where I think when I started, I actually took a acting for directors course.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. I remember that. Like just partially, like I was like, I don't speak the language. I don't know how to communicate with actors in a way that makes them feel heard. You know what I mean? It was just this, I just didn't have a common language. And once I, did the acting myself, it was so terrifying. And I was like, oh, like fear is such a big part of this on both sides. Like it's scary directing and it's scary acting. And you're both standing out there really vulnerably and just thinking in terms of like, oh, maybe that's the thing to focus on. Maybe that's the connection to make, is helping them through that scary space. And I think once I flipped my mentality on that front, I think that really changed my relationship with actors.
I'm going to jump in here and just say, I think one thing we should talk about a little bit here is how showrunners are allowed to talk to actors, how directors are allowed to talk to actors. There's a lot of rules about all of this. And also, I think it might be interesting for the listener who perhaps hasn't worked in, who's not an actor or who hasn't worked in the television or film medium, that I think a newbie would think, or somebody from the outside might think, well, just be prescriptive. Tell them, and people actually make a joke about that. The joke is louder, faster, funnier. Just say to them like, hey, you know what? You're doing something weird with your face. Could you stop doing that weird thing with your face? Or this line was supposed to be funny. Could you do it like this? Like all sorts of things that we could laugh about it now, because you would never be allowed to do that. You're not allowed to give line readings. You're not allowed to be like, say it like this. Actors aren't allowed to give other actors like, hey, I think you should do this. And I think coming from comedy, which a lot of times is about set up punchline, it sort of actually drives me crazy of like, I wish people could just get prescriptive and say, hey, if you do it like this, it'll be much better. But I think the reason they don't is that I think a lot of comedy actors come from outside in, like they're willing to take notes about how they look or feel because they're sort of thinking the performance with an externalized view of how does this come across. Whereas I think most actors, especially most people who are going to ascend to being your lead actor in a TV show, most of those folks come from the internal world. Do you know what I mean? They're not going to do shit unless they feel it, believe it. Do you know what I mean? Like they know that they're probably going to look like fools if they start thinking from the outside in. I hope I'm being articulate about this.
Yeah.
So they can't just, if they go ahead and just like, well, I'll just do the line like this, or I'll just hit the joke on that, it's going to make me take them out of that centered, grounded, internal place that is probably their bread and butter.
Yeah.
Or one thing we're going to touch on too, maybe we can just clarify, is the role of showrunner versus director in TV. Because in film and movies, the director is talking to the actor exclusively. Really no producer or no other type of person is really giving any performance. And the same is true in TV, but it's just a little bit of a different dynamic. The director might also be the showrunner, then they're kind of one and the same. But if the director is someone other than the showrunner, then they're the ones giving all the performance notes and everything. But the showrunner is going to have maybe a strong opinion and a little bit more, continuity with the overall story and the other episodes, and it's going to be more kind of dialed into the creative, and the showrunner being, the more creative, boss on TV. The director and showrunner, will be talking a lot in terms of performance, and the showrunner kind of has to get their performance notes to the actor through the director, which sometimes is very smooth and other times, is not. And, it can really depend on that relationship. And in any given show, you might have, 5 or more directors over the course of that season. So a showrunner is kind of constantly having to adapt to other directors and get these performance ideas to actors, but then offset. Actors may come to the showrunner and say, I'm doing this thing. I'm playing it a little bit more like this. The scene tomorrow, I think I'm going to play it like this. And those conversations, if I'm not mistaken, are totally, inbounds, and the actor is going to have kind of a really longer term relationship with the showrunner than they are the director. So it's just a little delicate. It's a little different. It's kind of something you have to constantly navigate and be really respectful of the director without abandoning your actor too.
Right. I will say too, sorry, I'm doing all the talking, that the showrunner has the first relationship with unless you've got like something where you've got Martin Scorsese is the director. Like if you've got some superstar director who's part of it right from the beginning, I'm sure they're having some initial conversations. But in general, it's this, like you said, there might be 5 directors, 10 directors in a season, but the showrunner is consistent throughout. So they're going to have that initial conversation. Like, for example, they'll probably be a part of the casting of choosing the actor in the first place. So those first initial phone calls or Zoom meetings or coffee shop meetings, or not coffee shop, but of like, why do you want to do this? Who is this character? You get to build that trust and build that communication. You're kind of co-creating the character, which is crazy. Like as the writer, as the showrunner, kind of the head writer, you're writing it out, right? You're brainstorming it, writing it, and the character is yours. And then you hand it over and somebody speaks it and acts it, and then it's theirs. But really, it's both of yours.
Yeah. That's a good point. The actor is typically making the commitment, the creative commitment to the showrunner, even before the director is even known, and so that relationship usually is, like you said, the creative spine of the actor creative relationship.
Well, and I think at its best, I feel like the lead character, those characters are, like you said, Stacey, co-created with the showrunner and the actor. It becomes a combination of the two. Instead of the show, there's the version of the showrunner. It's like, I've written it. It's all perfect. Just do it as it's written. But over time, that breaks down as opposed to like, here's an example is, in our first season, the Waco, Taylor Kitsch played David Koresh, and he started doing, lots of his own research and like looking into things. And he read, the scripts initially, and he said, "Oh, you know what? I wish was there." Like after David Koresh was shot, he called his mom, and he's like, "I just find that such a sad thing that like this guy at this moment, why would he call his mom?" He's like, "I find that so complicated and interesting." And we're like, "Oh yeah, I don't know why we didn't put that in the script. Like, that's in the history. Why didn't we put that in the script?" And we added that to the script, and it was an amazing scene. And I feel like, Michael Dorman and Joe Pickett, like there's a lot of scenes and a lot of the character nuance that came from just like human discussions with Michael, about, our lives and his life, and, and the character becomes this really kind of beautiful combination of both of our artistic instincts or all of ours. It's like a group, and trying to be the sole person whose vision is being executed just doesn't tend to work as well as getting everyone really invested, especially your leads, because, what's the saying, season 1, they work for you, season 2, you're, partners, and season 3, you work for them.
Yeah. So if in season 1, you, the showrunner, you, the big old boss, pull them in to collaborate and you're co-creating, then hopefully by season 3, when everybody could give a shit that you existed, hopefully they're winning Emmys, hopefully they'll repay the favor and bring you in, and it'll still be a collaboration. Whereas if you spent season 1 going, "Dance, monkey, I'm not laughing, monkey, dance," then I think season 3 you're going to be eating alone in your trailer a lot.
Yeah. Your season 3 is how you're treated season 3, I'm sure, is directly related to how you act season 1, and just listening to them. Some actors, over the course of a season 2 will have concerns. There will be directors who kind of come in and sort of push them around a little too much. And there'll be directors who don't give them enough, or who give them way too much. And, I found, on Pickett, like I had a standing lunch every week with Michael Dorman, and every Tuesday we'd have lunch, and I'd come to him and we'd sit down and just hearing like his concerns, what he's worried about, anything he wants to talk about with character, or just like being human, what's going on in his life. I found those, that not just like something, to do on a business front, but like it became part of the reason, like, this is why we do this. This is why we do this, is to connect with people on a deep level. Like, I feel like the writing, the directing, the show running, it's just kind of an excuse to, get together with people and talk about the real stuff in life. And that's, the actors are a great place to start with that.
I'd like to jump in and say that's also a great opportunity to invite people into leadership. What I mean is, I would say Michael Dorman is really a leader. He's a very sweet, gentle, good-hearted person. So a lot of those meetings, it's not just like you guys were having your lunches and, talking about Joe feels like this, but it wasn't all feelings. Yes, the feelings is the fun stuff and the life story is the fun stuff. But he did a lot of like quiet, low-key advocating for, say, the crew. Do you know what I mean? There was a lot of, "Hey, I noticed this, this key is maybe sort of pushing around that key," or, you know what I mean? Like, not that he's a tattletale. I don't want to make it sound like that. He wasn't at all. But like, you have, if the showrunner is not on set that much, you don't know what's going on with the camera department, or what kind of scandal is, going on in the costume department. I just threw those out. No scandals, no, delightful people. But you know what I mean? It's nice to get that intel. Yeah. And I'd say that's a leadership role. So it's like when you're talking to your leads like that, it's like leader to leader. Yeah. Maybe that's why they're called the leads.
No, it's true. You are so thankful when you have that kind of lead actor that is also, a leader on set and a leader with the rest of the cast and the crew. And like you said, Stacey, they're just so tuned into things that you're just totally unaware of. Like as a showrunner, you tend to be like, the parents a little bit. When the parents are around, everybody kind of behaves, a little bit better. And
Yeah, that's true.
Hides
That's true.
the drama from you, and so the actors will fill you in on all that, when you need it and when it's important.
The character actor guest stars don't hit on the crew quite as hard when the showrunners are around. There aren't as many shoulder rubs.
I got to say, your on-set writer too. If you have an on-set writer, that can be a very good, because nobody pays any attention to the on-set writer. That's a good person to check in with every day and go like, how's it going? Oh, this director's kind of doing 1,000 takes and it's burning everyone. Like, that can be a really helpful, real eyes and ears. Because like Drew said, like when the showrunner's there, people are aware of that and try to act right. Where when you're not there, that can be really helpful.
One thing you were saying earlier too, Jen, I want to come back to is just the kind of making it personal. Like, one thing that I feel like you're really good at that I've learned from is just how, when talking to an actor about their character, especially in the early stages, like if you know the material well and you've related certain scenes and certain experiences of the character to your own life and to your own, maybe it's your childhood, maybe it's, your divorce or your, something personal that, that you can open up about. I find that is the most effective, connection point with an actor, is to personalize something about that script and that character and in your own life. And actors tend to remember it. I just remember we did a movie with Owen Wilson, 10 years ago now. And there was personal details that came up in those conversations on that movie in Thailand a decade ago that he'll still bring up, and he still remembers. And it's really, meaningful. And I think, with Michael Dorman on Joe Pickett, when he could kind of internalize so many things about Joe and Joe's upbringing and how he could relate to some of those things on a personal level that he may not, revisit much in his mind, he could kind of go there as part of this character, and the performance becomes so personal and so believable and all those things. And, but it often helps a lot to kind of open that door first, to say, what I love about this scene is I remember this one time when I was 6 and his kids, threw me down a flight of stairs and I was crying and I was by whatever kind of story that is like hard to bring up, is really, it opens the door wide open and actors just dive right in when they see you get personal.
It's almost like an artistic version of Never Have I Ever.
It is. Yeah.
Everyone likes to get deep. I remember, so I did a drama troupe. I had always done like acting and stuff, but I did a drama troupe in 8th grade. And 8th grade, usually when people are closing up and they're starting to get very like self-protected, man, 8th grade drama troupe was just the opposite. And we're talking about cheesy. We'd go to like the senior center and be like, we're doing a show for the old people. I mean, the corniest. But our teacher was like, let's get deep. Let's talk. Everybody's talking about their schizophrenic mom at home, their like body image problems. And then we just go to Eaton Park at night and the football players and all the other people would be like, flirting and blowing straws and all that. And we'd just be crying. We'd literally go to the diner and just like tell deep stories and try to outdo each other with how messed up our lives were and weep, you know what I mean? And I think most actors, they have that, like most actors have that kernel. That's why they want to do it. I mean, not just that. They also have the very shallow side of they want to look good and all that, which is important. You don't get to be a big old star if you look like a pile of crap. But they want to get deep. And the truth is they've probably been doing it since they were little. Most of these lead actors started out at like Dolly Dinkle's dance school. You know what I mean? Like all those Ryan Gosling. God, have you ever seen that footage of him dancing in that sequin vest? You ever seen it like as a 10-year-old? Amazing. I think most actors kind of come from that.
Yeah,
they've got
true.
that, and they love it if the director and the showrunner cry with them at Eaton Park too.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's true. Drew and I had. Do you remember? Drew and I went to military school, and
all
so there
boys
wasn't
Catholic military school.
Yeah, all boys
Catholic.
Catholic military school, a real thing. And
what a perfect fit for you two.
Totally perfect. And they had these family change retreats for all the kids who had been through something, a death in the family, and our family had been through this, pretty ugly divorce, and so we'd go to these, and everyone, it was so great because it was all these kids you knew from the military school, but same kind of thing, all getting deep and talking about, abuse and alcoholism and just all this stuff that a lot of us were dealing with. And I just remember those being that some of my favorite times in all of high school was going
Totally.
like, oh my God, I had no idea other people were dealing with like heavy stuff the way we were. As I feel like actors, just like writers, we've all been through something. There's a reason we're propelled into a space to be vulnerable, to work through things publicly, whether that's through writing, through acting, through any of the arts. Like, nobody gets into the arts who didn't have some event that made them start thinking in terms of content and reality, or, you know what I mean? Like, to separate, it's a I don't know, a coping mechanism that we've all come to this for some reason. I feel like actors go on to set over and over thinking like, am I safe here? Is this a safe place for me? Actors need somebody there who's going to love them through all their ups and downs, who's going to be there and be a sounding board and be present and not somebody who's going to be like, well, if they won't do the line, then, they need somebody to talk them through the line sometimes, or, they may be like, I don't understand why this character's doing this at this moment, instead of getting defensive and being like, well, it's good. It's a good line, instead of being that person, being like, taking the time to be like, oh, that line came from, I had this moment in my own life where this thing happened. It was really weird, but like, this is a version of that. And that's where this, this came from. Or something human like that. I feel like just keeping it in the human realm, like, really helps the relationship in a way that's counterintuitive. I feel like in my early directing, I had armor on. I was like, okay, nobody question that I know what I'm doing, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was winging it every day, and I was terrified. And before work every day, I'd go in the corner and like pray, like, please God, get me through the day.
Yeah.
And now it's a little more just making sure the actors feel okay, and that that's kind of my focus now, more and more.
I think especially the first few days that an actor's on a show, the very beginning is the most important period of time and the most delicate balance in terms of just emotions, can be running high. And I think every actor is kind of entering a show trying to figure out or determine if they're happy to be there or not, if they made the right decision by saying yes to the show. And I think, sometimes you'll see some more of those kind of spikes in emotion in those first few days. And, instead of letting an actor just kind of storm off set and go stew in their trailer, I think, one thing I've seen you do, John, that I've emulated as a director too, is you follow them to that trailer. You follow them outside and say, I know something's wrong. Tell me what's bothering you. And if you don't take that opportunity, you've kind of you've missed a chance to get closer. You've missed a chance to build that trust and to have them come back on set confidently knowing that you got their back. You're not going to, make a big public thing about it. You're going to, quietly follow them out, figure out what's going on, keep it, kind of private and protect them. And I think, I've seen an actor turn around 180 degrees on day one after a moment like that and just be so fully committed after that. I was like, wow, that John following that actor out into the parking lot and, it really just calling a timeout on a whole day where you got, 150 people waiting inside and saying, we're in no rush. I want to hear what's bothering you. And, however long that takes. And,
opportunities for intimacy.
Yeah,
that's what they call it. And that How
That's
to Raise an Emotionally Intelligent Child.
Yeah,
one of those
that's it.
books was like those kind of problems are an opportunity for intimacy.
Yeah, and you need to take. You don't get many of those opportunities, especially
Yes.
early. And so,
Especially
if you have one of
early.
those opportunities, it's helpful not to look at it like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening already. It just got here yesterday, and we're already."
I
having
remember the other thing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of them can begin with what you notice. Like,
Yeah.
hey, you seem brr.
Yeah.
You seem disappointed, or like you seem upset, or not.
Yeah.
And then it can, so just sort of acknowledging, and then the person, if they are in a state, can be like, that's right, I'm seen. I do feel, or maybe you got it wrong of like you seem upset. Well, I'm actually disappointed or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe you got it wrong. They seem upset with the DP, but really they're upset with themselves because they flubbed something. It's anyway, by saying to somebody, this is what I'm observing, it lets them, you can hash it out together.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
And I remember, that day, Drew, you're talking about, it was like, you seem upset, like, what's going on? And we had this, and he was feeling like he wasn't doing his best work, and the work was amazing. And it was like, sometimes, we're all scared or, you know what I mean? Like intimidated, or, we loaded him up with way too much work on day one, and it was just unfair. And I felt like he was being unfair. And I told him, like, hey, I know you don't know me yet, very well, but I feel like you're being really unfair to yourself. And I think you should give yourself a little more, credit and a little more room. And it was that moment, at that moment, I feel like we went from being two people working on something to two human beings going through an experience together. And it made us friends, like genuinely friends. And I feel like that's the difference. That's what we all need. We all need that sometimes. Like, Drew, and Stacy, both of you guys are that for me. Like the moments where I'm like losing my mind, like you guys are the ones, you know what I mean? Who, like, you look upset. What's going on? You know what I mean? Like we all need that.
Today.
Yeah.
Right. How do you do that as the showrunner? I know how you do that as the director. Like a lot of these examples, naturally, you're going to be like, you fall on them out. There's a lot of stuff that only the director is allowed to do in the moment. Or if the showrunner does it, they have to do it through the director of like, hey, can I speak to you for a second? Director runs out. Pss, 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 pss. Director goes back to the actor. How do you mentioned having a standing lunch date with one of your lead actors. What are other ways
I would also
you can
clarify
create that?
I would also clarify too that I think between takes and performance specific notes to an actor is a director's job and a director alone. I think if there's a conversation in the middle of the day and an actor's upset and there's a timeout and he's stepping out, I think a showrunner absolutely can go have that conversation. I think. I mean, what do you think, John? I don't think that's
also a lot of times the actor brings them in. I've never been a showrunner, but I've been the on-set, supervisor a bunch, and there can be a lot of like the director goes away for a second, the actor's like, hey, can I ask you about this line, or and that's how it begins. And then I was told by Nelson, thank you, Nelson, for the excellent advice, that if it's starting to get into a deep place where I feel like I might be overstepping my bounds, in a panic, I should look for the director and be like, maybe we should bring you into this, so I don't get fired. And then it becomes a 3-person conversation. Yeah. But, so sometimes the actor can, in fact, sort of summon you or reach out to you. And I'm sure as the showrunner, it's got to be. Although you guys had noticed that a lot of times the on-set supervising, the covering writer is invited into those conversations maybe more than the showrunner is, because the director is going to be less intimidated by the covering writer than the showrunner. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think TV directors are generally more open to having, a little bit bigger conversation. Yeah, 3-person conversation than a film director would be.
And there are a lot of those. There are a lot of those 3-person conversations.
Totally.
Well, and I think too, like with our actors too, like we tend to say like, hey, anything that comes up anytime, like we're always available, call anytime, like, you know what I mean? Like if I'm sleeping, my phone's off, so it won't ring, like call anytime, day or night. You never have to hesitate. You don't have to set up a call. I'm always available to you. And just creating that opening where, actors will reach out. They'll be like, hey, this scene came up in the next, episode, and I just don't feel comfortable with that. And, or whatever it is. And again, too, like if something's going to be a hot button, there's a nudity scene or, off the top of my head, like, or something that the actor, like, don't just let the page get to them and them have to go through that alone. Get ahead of that. Like, reach out to them and say, hey, we're thinking of adding, we've had moments like this, like we're thinking of adding a scene like blank in the next episode. Would you be comfortable with that? If you're not, like, no one will ever know you're not comfortable with it. It just won't be in the script, and we've had those, conversations with, we had one character, showed his butt in a scene and we're like, hey, we had that conversation like, hey, if you wouldn't be comfortable with this, it just won't be in the script. So no one, you never have to feel that discomfort of being like not a team player or something like that. Like,
Are you talking about the award-winning Chad Rook?
Chad Rook.
What did he just win? He won a Canadian award.
He won a Leo award. Yeah.
He won a
Leo
Leo.
award.
Yeah,
Way to
Leo.
go, Chad. Yeah.
Yeah.
For Billy the Kid. Congratulations, Chad.
I think a lot of those conversations happen standing in line for lunch. I have noticed, one thing, a lot of times showrunners, they're up high, right? They might have an assistant get their lunch, bring it back, and they're in their trailer because they might just want to like relax for a second or turn around rewrites or things like that. But when the showrunner comes out, I'm speaking as the covering writer, when you're standing in line and you're getting your own lunch, that gives a nice opportunity for an actor to drift up to you to go, hey, I noticed. Here's one I had with Sharon Lawrence, who's also super genius. She is so on the ball and smart that she actually noticed that one of her scenes that wasn't going to be shot for like another week switched from an interior to an exterior. Like they had it, I don't know, in the slug lines or whatever. Like, so she was like, hey, I noticed it was going to be that interior scene, and then it turned into an exterior. And I was like, oh yeah, we're not actually allowed in that house there. So we're going to set the whole thing like by a waterfall or whatever. And she was like, huh. And she was able to like process that and quickly go like, I don't know if she did it right then or afterward, but sort of followed up like, hey, I have a lot. And I explained how the scene was going to be very funny now and blah, blah. And she had a chance to explain that she loves comedy. She does a lot of it. Her character has a lot of comedic moments. But the reason she had loved the scene in its pre-existing form was it finally gave her character a chance to go deep and do a little more drama. So I would never have known that. I would have just been like, it's another great Missy comedy scene. Sharon Lawrence is hilarious. But to have her say, hey, the scene as previously written was a little more dramatic. And to be honest, I loved that. And I kind of missed that. And then I got to go back to you guys, convey that information. And then you could create a new scene that is in an exterior, but is dramatic. And then she knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
So, but you have to be available for those. Like that might have been too small a deal for her to get on the phone and be like, hey, I noticed it's an exterior, not an interior now. Is it still going to be,
Yeah.
That would have been too small a deal to bring up in such a big way. But if you catch somebody by the coffee, by the trailer, by lunch.
Yeah. Well, and to have an on-set writer who people can go to and who will relay stuff, and to have that openness and communication where, sometimes an on-set writer's less intimidating than calling, than making a phone call or someone's there and you can like just sort of bring something up, and to have on-set writers who, will keep track of that stuff and bring them up so that the actor then sees those script pages adjusted and is like, oh my God, thank God I feel heard, I think, often there's, over the course of a season, over the course of an episode, like often an actor will be stuck or focused or worried about one specific scene, whether that's a big emotional moment or something that taps some vulnerability inside of them. And I would just say, like, just as it's helpful sometimes to make sure you're available for those days. If you will know those scenes, you will know the scenes the actors are worried about because they will let you know. And to make sure you're there and available on those days for support and openness.
Like literally be there on set, you mean?
Yeah.
Because the showrunner is not on set every day.
Not every day, yeah.
No.
But if you show that you're paying attention, that, that the actor had a concern about the scene, so you're there to, I think that really goes a long way. I think actors really appreciate it when they know, just another sign that you've got their back and you know what they're concerned about and you're there for them. And I think that's really, really key. Because there is, with every block, not even every season, with every block, maybe it's a 2-episode block, there's one scene. There's one scene that your lead is not so sure about or really excited about, but it has to be just perfect. There's just one thing that stands out, and just to kind of be around for that thing, I think is good.
Yeah. And to go through the schedule at the start of every block and go, okay, these are kind of the flyover scenes. I'm not so worried about that. These are the scenes that we really need to make sure are amazing, and the actor's worried about it, or I just want to make sure, it's handled delicately, or that the director that day is, giving them space to do this properly, whatever it is. Like you will know those scenes, and to be there, like willing and able to love them unconditionally, and to be there and to create a safe space for your actors, because it's scary. It's scary being out there, and if a scene doesn't work, they're the face on it. You're not the face on it. You may be the words in the mouth, you know what I mean? But you're not standing, people aren't going to look at you and be like, I don't believe that. Like, that's
nice
not
accent,
you.
John.
Yeah, totally. Like they are out there in a way that you aren't. And that is worth being aware of and being compassionate about.
Yeah, agreed.
If the actor has given you enough of a heads up, you can also talk to the AD. Is it the second AD is it the first or the second who allots the amount of time? Like this strip,
first.
Okay. So, usually they're really great at that. Sometimes it can go a little wrong where they're like, wait, this strip only gets an hour and this strip gets 4 hours. I think those special scenes, maybe it's probably a good idea, right? To speak to the first AD and make sure there's enough time for the actor to get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, just wrapping up, I would say, the actionable piece of advice for this is just love your actors. Like, be there, be available, bring your heart, bring your vulnerability to the table, and you will build a relationship with them that you can't get through trying to trick them into doing stuff or, any other way. Like it's only through vulnerability that you'll be able to, lead or work with your actors in a meaningful way, I believe.
It's true. And try to do that as early in your relationship as humanly possible, where you're not waiting till you get to know each other super well before you get vulnerable. I think the earlier you can go to those places with your actor, the more quickly you'll trust each other.
If you like our show or found this helpful, please consider taking a minute to rate us wherever you get your podcasts and tell a friend. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Au revoir.